Hey, so welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for uh the 31st of July 2024. We'll follow our standard agenda, which was generated in the repo as issue number 1604. To start out with, anybody have any announcements they'd like to share?
Hi, folks. Whoever has not received their notification for node.conf will receive it shortly. Okay, so it's been the agenda is almost finalized, but I don't think everybody has received their approval yet. In case, and of course, there's tickets available, and almost all the sponsor slots have been done. Sorry for the promo for node.conf. We are still looking for a venue in Dublin for holding the Collaborator Summit. So if you know of somebody that has a space that can host us, either before or after node.conf, please let us know.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I guess at some point we might have to say, like, we're not going to get somebody to sponsor, so can we get the foundation to help us pay for one or something?
Yeah, but Joe?
Yeah, I have a lead on something. I'm waiting to hear back. IBM office in Dublin, so I'll keep you all posted.
Amazing. By the way, it's actually very hard to find locations in Dublin. Okay. Generically, in all top places have already been taken. Okay.
Okay.
I do have a fallback plan that costs some money. Okay. I can, if you want, forward it up. It's a I would call it's a nice location, a little bit outside of the city. Okay. So, which, require transportation to go to and come back. Okay. This is the gist. I can start an email thread if you want, on this topic.
I think it wouldn't hurt at this point to start. I think
okay.
Hopefully,
I'm starting an email thread with you, Joe, myself, and Robin, maybe, so that we can start talking a little bit about this option.
Yeah, perfect. Understand, like, as a fallback, like, yeah, it would cost X, but we can get the money.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
But it's either that. So.
Yeah. Okay. Any other announcements people would like to share? Okay, if not, our regular reminder to nominate people for the contributor spotlight. I see that Kylie also sent an email reminder. We should start to get that pipeline full so that we have some people nominated for the next round. CPC and board meeting updates. Joe, would you like to jump in with the CPC update?
Oh, I feel like I should always be prepared for these, and somehow I never am. What is going on in the CPC? I think there may be some updates for the private session, but I think in general, I think that we have our code of conduct moderation team. We have a PR open to land that, some primary members as well as alternate members. What else is going on?
On the board side, there is the plan for having ban event back in 2025 is progressing. So a name is being discussed. So a name is being thrown around. A few names has been thrown around. How much is a focus of Node versus the rest of the JavaScript ecosystem? Quite a few interesting topics. Okay, I cannot share anything much public over there, but seems the top locations will be in Seattle, and it's going to happen in fall 2025. And now I think, but there's a lot of time between now and fall 2025. No, not really. You need 1 year of advance for booking a prime location.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other board or CPC updates?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. So at this point, let us switch over to the one that Nikita has come to help us discuss. So that one I can see it was added to the agenda. Can somebody, I guess, Nikita, do you want to launch into that or somebody else?
Yes, I can tell about it. First of all, I am very excited about this feature that Mark implemented and about experimental strip types. So in general, I'm very happy about this. It's just some security concerns about the implementation details that I have right now. And I believe that we can fix those very fast. I just want them to get into the first release. So those are not unaddressed before the first release is done, when the users will start testing this. That was the introduction. And the pull request that introduced experimental strip types was reviewed under two assumptions. First of them is that it only strips types and doesn't have a code transform inside it, so it cannot do anything except type stripping. And the second of that is that it was built from the source code we have in our own repo. I don't think that either of the assumptions is true right now. The source code in the repo is 600 megabytes of unaudited dependencies. And upon a closer investigation, it looks like those are not even used in the build process. The build process pulls something from the internet likely and then bundles that into the WASM that is currently inside the main branch. So the WASM inside the main branch was not generated from the source code that we have inside the repo. That is one of the concerns. And second concern is that WASM is fully capable of producing generated code, not just type stripping, as I showed in the example on GitHub. So I can give details about that. And it is just our default setting is that sets us to type stripping, but even that could be triggered in runtime by the user with some adjustments. And a potential, like the issue that I'm seeing with this is that a potential supply chain attack like the one that happened with ESLint back in the days can get into the WASM bundle, and that WASM bundle generates code in JavaScript that is executed on users' machines with host permissions. And without users actually inspecting that code before it gets executed. So what I'm proposing for this is, first of all, add a patch that ensures that the output of the WASM is expected, because the thing that it is recommended to do is just replace some characters with white space or semicolons. And the code inside SVC core for that specific part is very compact, and all it should do is replace bytes with spaces with potential multi-byte spaces, just specific byte values and semicolons. And we can recheck that the generated code in the only mode that we use right now actually matches that assumption before executing it. That can be a template solution before we can figure out the build process. And for the longer term, we should make the build process deterministic, ensure that the expected sources get built in, and that it does not contain source files that we do not expect. So that's mostly all. I filed a pull request for the first one, and I'm investigating the second one.
I see Marco has his hand up.
Yeah, so the dependency update of Amaro basically updates SWC to version 1.7.1. That is the official version of it, latest official version of SWC, which also has transform capabilities that are not enabled in Node Core, and then only through internals monkey patching a user could enable. So if we're like, if trusted code is running and performing internals monkey patching, I think the changing the output of the transform sync is the least of the concerns. But and the second point is that the WASM was built in the same way that SWC builds the package. So instead of using the crates in the source code, it actually used the crates that are released on the Rust registry. So it downloads the crates that we used to build SWC from the registry. This means if we apply the same concept that every package that use SWC, such as RSPack, Dino, or whatever, they are vulnerable to supply chain attack because they're using some packages. It's like saying that every package that downloads stuff from NPM and bundles it is vulnerable. And like, which is true, but it's it's a bit like unrealistic to have the sources available on the project. So like we could fix this with a log file, and for some reason there was not a log file, and like this is something that we can fix. But like I personally say that SWC is trusted and very unlikely that that we have malicious code in running inside the WASM. So like, while I think that we should be more strict with our like security policies and like improve them, I think that checking, like adding a check, it's like putting a patch on something that like on a different problem that is supply chain. And I think that is more wide of a problem. It's not related only to Amaro, but to like a lot of the dependent, a lot on the way that we build our dependencies. Like there is work to do. So like that's why I don't think that we should block the update of Amaro to version 0.5 and like postpone the release for this reason.
This would be the first release that includes the Amaro dependency?
Yes.
Because I could see us breaking the question like in two pieces. One, like there's already stuff in main, so landing an update to it, it's like, well, like that's not making it any worse. The first release might be slightly different because it's the first time that stuff goes out. So I'd almost see those as two separate questions. Anybody else have comments? I see Peter, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I think that we should get a page and enable that page either in Node.js or into Amaro directly and update Amaro before the first release is done. By the way, we should likely update it past version 0.0.5 into the first release, because there was also an ICI bug that I discovered that was not fixed yet. Like it was reported previously, the fix was landed, but I found out that it was not actually fixed, and it is not entirely fixed in 0.0.5, but upstream, as we see, just fixed it today. So perhaps we want to get that in and the security check in, get that into the release, and then after that figure out the build process, how can we remove the safeguard and things like that, and just
In terms of, sorry, Matteo has his hand up.
Sorry, there are two things. The first one, I personally don't think the release is the safeguard is needed for releasing this. Okay, mostly because it's not run by default. Okay, so if somebody does not opt in into this, they do not add anything. They don't add any. So the code does not pass through that transpiler, so at all. So there is absolutely zero risk for standard Node.js usage. Okay, and specifically for people trying out that feature, okay, which are the people that could have been attacked by a supply chain. Looking at risk, I personally don't see a significant risk right now. Like, we are not at risk of a supply chain attack in this specific moment. Okay. Now, I can totally see that to unflag this feature and to progress, this should be a top priority to fix. But frankly, releasing it and putting it in the hand of people to test it out is probably worthwhile anyway. And deferring for another week or two or so on when this is fixed, I personally don't think it's easy. Like it's worthwhile, specifically because there are much more sensitive paths, okay, in which somebody could sneak in code during our dependency updates. Okay, we have scripts running automatically. We do not validate those the signatures of those updates and so on and so forth. It's true that those happens on our tree, but generically it's when you're landing a dependency update that contains, I don't know, 5,000 lines of change, the fact that somebody's sneaking some bad code in it, it's very, very easy. Okay, so that's my essentially. Frankly, if it stays experimental, if it stays right now, I don't see the problem. Okay, however, it's definitely a concern long term.
Antoine has his hand up.
Yeah, so I think as long as this stays a dev-only feature, the type stripping, I think the runtime check is okay, especially if we can make it off-thread. Like maybe if we move it to C++, it could be a different thread doing the work and just crashing the process in case something wrong with it. But yeah, that seems like an easy check to do. And given it's, I think the first time where we are not going to run directly the user code, I guess it sort of makes sense to me about that. That's it.
I see Nikita has his hand up.
yes. So about performance, I don't think that we should be optimizing performance over security for this. And the performance optimization is still on the roadmap, and the initial pull request landed without performance optimizations, I believe. And the check in the current form is about 3% of the whole transform time due to my initial benchmark. So it's just at 3% on the low, not on the low time, at the when the user loads the code from disk at the startup or in dynamic requires whatever, and as we see transforms the code on the fly, that adds about 3% time to that transform. So it's not a significant performance concern. I think we shouldn't be over optimizing this at the current moment.
So like the way I would be fine on adding this is if we add this to Amaro and make it configurable with the flag. So like instead of doing the check inside .core, we do the check inside Amaro. We wrap the transform sync function from SWC in this check, and it can be enabled through a flag that node.js passes to Amaro. And like with that, I would be okay with it, because like I think the like validating that the output has the same length of the input could help us to find also bugs in SWC, and would be useful in certain occasion.
See, Nikita has his hand up.
I'm completely fine with that if that gets in by default for now, and we can figure out later when the build process improves if we want to disable it. And like I can file pull requests to Amaro with this check after this call, and in either case, we probably want an update of Amaro for the automatic semicolon insertion bug.
So it sounds like we have a way forward. I'm not sure if we can resolve this in the meeting here, but I think there were two questions. One is like landing things, updating the Marrow itself. I don't know if those all have to be in the same versions or not, like but should we or can we detach that from the update in Node, like going out in LTS? Or is that something we just need to push the discussion back to the issue?
So I think the next steps are move the change into Amaro, fix the build step, and release a new version of Amaro, and we will update it into core. So like we don't use version 0.0.5, but we will skip to the next version until these concerns are addressed. And since the release is next week, I think that is reasonable.
Okay, so you think we can basically get that change in fast enough that it can go into the next release?
Yes, that sounds completely fine to me.
Okay. Sounds like that's good. Any other discussion on this one before we move on? Okay, so let's move on to the next issue, which we have on the agenda, which is the Hero Dev ZSP program. I can see we have some guests, and I'm not sure if I don't know, Marco, did you invite them and want to kick things off, or should we just hand it over to them?
Yeah, maybe like maybe Joe, would you like to talk a bit, or
Well, actually, have Frosty take point on this.
Yeah, so it's nice to meet y'all. Thanks for all the hard work you guys do. It's fun being in these meetings and hearing what you guys are working on. Hero Devs is partnered with the Open JavaScript Foundation in their ESP program to help ensure that big enterprises have a commercial partner for pieces of open source in the community that they need support on. And so we're here to speak about that program and our involvement there with the Node team and I know that the TSC may have questions about how this works or about how we can collaborate if at all. And so we're here to chat about that. Joe, did we have a deck for this or
Yes, we do.
okay.
Do you want me to pull it up and share it, or
Yeah.
do you want to run the deck?
Yeah, go ahead and run the deck.
Okay. Share that. Everybody see that okay?
Yep. Okay, so this is these are some of our team members that you guys might all work with. Joe, and I, and there's Jordan Harvin, which some of y'all will know. We have a couple of our marketing folks and our chief product officer that also may interact with people on this team. So these are the people that you'll work with. And there's others, but these are the main partners that are coming from our side that you would reach out to and chat with. HeroDevs has a lot of really big customers. Um, we sell extended support for really big open source libraries that reach end of life. And so we end up working with a lot of big fintech and tech and healthcare tech and government tech companies. Google, Microsoft are two of our biggest customers. And then we've got partnerships with, groups like the Open JavaScript Foundation and the Drupal Foundation and like the Vue team and the Bootstrap team. We work hard to partner with a lot of as many of the open source projects directly that we can that our customers are requesting support for. And Node is definitely high on that list of products that when they reach end of life, enterprises need support for. So these are some of the people who we work with. We wanted to talk about our partnership, how it works. Some people feel confused or they may feel forced. We just want everyone to know there's really no obligations here. If the last time this group thinks about this is this meeting, that's totally fine. There's options to continue kind of working together. And so we're here to present how this partnership works. And so there's a path where, your team doesn't have to do anything, and there's a path where we decide to kind of lean into one another and maybe make this option a little more visible to the community. So we're here to chat about that, Joe. Yeah, so I'm going to go through the right side of the slide. So non-participation means that the TSC decides, hey, we're not going to really lean in too much to this relationship, which is totally fine. And there's hey Joe, can you take your Slack off the screen, bro? Sorry, man. Um, yeah, so if the no team decides, hey, we're not going to lean in, what that would mean for how this works for us is will continue to market our support for Node and our other products. 5% of any Node sales that we would get from that point on, 5% of those revenue would go back to this TSC to be governed however this team sees fit. Without any links from any sort of end of life pages, there's no leads and there would be a lot less sales. The next bullet point, it talks about 5% of the revenue comes to this team and 10% of the revenue would go to the OpenJS Foundation. So we would be contributing a significant portion back to OpenJS and to the TSC. And then our net revenue from what we do would be just quite a bit lower due to the lack of, like, I would just call it first class support from this team. And that's totally fine. Again, no one would need to feel any rift about that. We understand that there's a lot of points here that they are tough to gain consensus on. So that's if we don't participate. So the point here is if this team decides not to lean in, we're still going to be donating part of the revenue back to this team. I guess that's the main thing we want to say. If you do decide to participate, what does that mean? It's not a lot actually that would be required. We would have some opinions about maybe improving the end of life documentation that exists around Node. We're working with the Open Source Security Foundation to champion processes so that all open source projects have a more standardized way to talk about end of life and end of life versions. On that end of life page, we would ask that there be a commercial support option for like post end of life, and we would ask that be a list that people could be added to, and we would ask to be added to that list. And then we would also work with you to get banners on the homepage in the months leading up to any sort of major end of life for any like major upcoming versions. We would also want to update, like have a link to these things on the README just so that it's not difficult to discover if people are going straight to the repo. And with this type of leaning in, so there's not a lot of leaning in there, but with that type of leaning in, the leads that we generate will skyrocket. Like our lead gen for people who are affected by the end of life moments is going to go through the roof. And so we flip the 10% to the open source, to the OpenJS Foundation, 5 to this team. We flip it to 10% to this team and 5% to the OpenJS Foundation. And that's just because, I mean, just to be frank, the number of leads that will generate, it's at least it's 1 to 2 orders of magnitude different. Like it's a huge difference to have the TSC have a link to trusted partners for end of life options. It's a huge difference for the people who are calling us. So yeah, that's essentially what participation looks like. Joe, can you give me the next slide? So we want to talk about what our version would includes versus what our versions of Node will not include. So we'll provide specific unsupported versions available through private delivery channels, so they're not going to be publicly available. We will continue to scan, find, and fix any sort of CVEs that are in those older versions, including doing work like where possible, patching older versions of OpenSSL into those older builds and making that a thing. And we ultimately are trying to make sure that the software they're using continues to run where it runs today. That's one of our biggest requirements, and that it runs securely. All of the work for what we do is done by our team. So there's no like, as we do this, there's no burden put on to this team about doing the work for any sort of contract that we're selling. And our fixes apply only to our private fork, unless we find something that's also going to affect a currently supported version. We will then pull request those changes back into the public node repo, just as a way of disclosing, hey, here's our fix that we did. And then your team can decide how, if you want to scrap it and do your own fix or something else. But we also will work very closely with your team on a coordinated vulnerability disclosure, so that if we did ever find anything that affected currently supported builds, your team would know about it before any sort of CSV went up to MITRE.
Hey, Aaron.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just wanted to make sure that there was one thing in case anybody was not in the same context or didn't have the same context. We are talking about only the versions of Node that are no longer being supported by the TSC, by the maintainers. So versions that have been marked as end of life. That's what we're talking about. In case anybody here wasn't 100% sure about what we're talking about, just want to make sure that was clear, because that's an important point.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Our product does not include new features, so we're not adding new features to those unsupported versions of Node. It doesn't include bug fixes, which so you don't have to worry about bug fixes destabilizing our versions. We're not doing performance improvements as well. We're leaving features, bugs, and performance where it is, and we will not fix most peer compatibility issues, like with the exception of for our customers, there's lots of requests for OpenSSL to be addressed in these older versions, so we are addressing that.
Just
but
as a
we're not-
time check, I think we've got to limit the 8 minutes on
Okay.
this topic before we move on to the next one. So just give you some context.
Okay, so give me 60 seconds to finish up.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Joe, can you give me the next slide? So there's a couple steps our team would try and take with your team. That would be the next steps. Hey, as we look at your end of life or your end of version support pages, we'll have some suggestions and we'll work with your team. Any sort of change that would go to the site, your team's welcome to make, but we also are willing to do all of the work. So there's no burden put on this team to change any of the documentation. Can you give me the next slide, Joe? And then there's just a couple steps that the couple tasks our team's going to try and walk through with y'all, and our team would guide most of the work on this and do most of the work if the team doesn't want to. But again, if the team wants to do the work, the TSC is welcome to do any of these steps that they want to. But we're trying to be a burdenless step here for y'all.
Yeah, so from a high level, all we're doing is we're going to come up with a couple of mock-ups that you guys would approve of links that go on the site, maybe some clarity about some end-of-life policies that would end up on the site and direct people to Hero Devs in an appropriate manner. And we have examples of what we've done for some of the other groups and such, and we would need to get a couple of some sort of a point of contact so we could work through this process and get these links put up onto the node site and the GitHub README. And that's it.
I see, Matteo, you have your hand up.
Yes, one of the things that I think is problematic for Node is the fact that we do not emit CVEs for previous versions of Node.js. And this is perceived, this gives the perceptions to the users, okay, that those Node.js versions are safe, okay, even though they have vulnerabilities in them. Because we don't do the assessment to all versions of Node that was ever released. Like this will be a gargantuan work. Okay. So is there anything on that side that you are thinking of doing?
I would love to be your partner. Anytime you have a CVE and you want to offload a bunch of work and research of how do any CVEs affect older versions, I would love to get up a coordinated vulnerability disclosure conversation between the two organizations so that we could do a lot of that research for you. It's not obligatory to the relationship, but we would love to have that type of partnership with this team.
Yeah, I'm mentioning because this is, the question was who would do that? Like there was past discussions about this, and the question was who would do that work? Okay.
Generally,
like the main question was this is significant amount of work. Okay, it's not easy.
Yes.
It's not cheap amount of work. Yeah.
So, sorry.
I don't think it necessarily needs a complicated relationship either, right? Like after we publish a security release, if you wanted to look through the CVEs that were announced and then have your own blog post that says, hey, we've looked at older versions of Node and these ones are vulnerable to these.
Yeah.
Like that would be good. Maybe like something like that. Anybody's free to do something like that, right? So that, that would be one way to go.
If we did the research, Michael and Matteo, if we did that research, would you be willing to blend that into your findings as well? Like, hey, this affects all versions of Node versus just the currently supported versions? Like, if we did the research, would that be something you could blend into your results?
I guess as long as, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, like, the main thing I would want to do is avoid some responsibility for the project to do that forever, right? Like, so, it would be, I think we could do something that would help people say, like, and some of these partners do assessments of old versions, go look over here. But like, I wouldn't want to be like sucking in everyone and making it look like the project had done the assessment. Because then, like, for example, you decide, hey, we're not going to do it anymore. Now there's an expectation on the project
That you're doing it. Yeah.
Which goes back to Matteo's point of like, we don't have anybody to do it, necessarily. So we don't want to have the project be committed to that. But making it like on the, I pasted in the chat, I think like we already have an LTS page that says, here's the LTS versions. And a couple, at least for me, a couple lines that say, and for versions that are marked as LTS, we have some people, some partners for the OpenJS sustainability program who will look after EOL versions.
Yeah.
Here's the list. We might work some words into that to say, you know, and they sometimes look at whether, you know, vulnerabilities apply to those or not. Go take a look here, right? Like, and then if you had it
Yeah.
through that link, that might, you know, so like that might make sense without us sort of promising, but pointing to,
Yeah.
there's some information available over here, right?
Yeah, 100%. In the interest of time, I think there's a long conversation we have on this to make sure it works for everyone. And so maybe let's take it later.
Yeah.
Sounds
think
good.
another
Antoine, just before we
another
finish that,
solution, would be for someone, so for example, you to open a PR, adding a link on the blog post talking about the security release. By the way, we also found that those versions are vulnerable. Click here to learn about the discovery. So that way, the project doesn't really have anything to do but to review the PR.
as long as
Yeah.
we do it in a way that that doesn't imply that that's always going to be there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I don't see any other hands. I just want everyone to know we're really, really excited about this. We work with, like we said, we started as a small company, but we sold to the biggest companies in the world first. They became our clients, and so we have a weird client base for such a smaller organization. And Node is one of the more requested things. We expected this to be something that provides a lot of value to our customers, which if you say that a different way, it will get a lot of sales, which we think will be a good thing for everyone involved. And so we're excited to see how this plays out for us, for the OpenJS Foundation, for this TSC, and then also the value we provide and the security we provide to our customers. So it's going to be an exciting partnership, and we're excited.
The main action point that we'll need is some kind of a
Okay, so I think that we do need to move on to our next topic. I'd suggest, you know, if we can take these conversations, like in terms of the suggestions of what to add and where, offline, like to async either in an issue. I'm not sure what people think, like what format should there be an issue open to discuss or something else?
An issue or a point of contact that we can kind of arrange conversations with. If this team wants to say, hey, person A, why don't you run point on this with Hero Devs? That would be a great way for this to run for us.
Do we want to just have it like start a thread on the TSC email list, like email account? Does it make sense to people here?
Yeah, our shared Slack channel or an email list would be great for us. For Hero Devs.
I think, Antoine, which Slack channel did you have in mind?
Maybe we can create one or
That sounds, do you
use
want
not core.
to take that one on, or?
I don't think I'm an admin on the Slack, OpenJS Slack, but
Okay.
I can try.
I'm happy to send a kickoff email, and then maybe we can just discuss there if we want to like create a Slack channel or whatever. That makes sense.
Yep, makes sense. We'll stick around for an invite when that happens, and we'll be here.
So maybe Marco, can you just send me the email to include on that initial discussion, and then we can go from there and like figure out, yeah, maybe some Slack channel would make sense going forward anyway. So
All right. I will write in chat.
okay, that's good. So let's move on to the next topic. We have Amir from the OSTIF to give us a bit of an update. So let's dive into that.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Just thought I would hop in this meeting to first off, thank everyone for the feedback on via that email thread, the node.js fuzzing audit report email thread. We got some good feedback from there that is being incorporated into the report to update. And it looks like the last message in that thread has to do with a issue with OSS fuzz itself that I believe needs to be remediated or essentially updated before the fuzzers can start running again. And I just sent the link to that issue there. But yeah, so that's the quick update there. Hopefully, once we get both that link with OSS Fuzz running again and get the report updated with the feedback from Michael and I believe a few others in that email thread, I'll join this group again and just get the final thumbs up for publishing. But that is the quick update there. If there are any questions or if there's anyone who hasn't seen the report yet, I can make sure that it gets to you for feedback and things like that.
Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, if not, I guess thanks for the update, and we will move on to the last issue we had tagged for the agenda, which is conversion to an enterprise account. I think, Matteo, I'm guessing you added that, did you, or was it somebody else?
Really don't want to deal too much with it. So if it's clicking a button, I'm very happy to, but it seems there is no consensus of doing these operations. So I am very happy to not do it and wait till September. Okay. So this is my 2 cents of the topic. Okay. I think we should do it as soon as possible to find out if there are problems instead of waiting till the end of September. But if there is no consensus, I'm not the one that is going to push for doing the change. So I'm absolutely okay to wait till the end of September, till the beginning of September to switch. So this is the TLDR of the issue. Okay. Like I even wrote this, so I'm tagging it for visibility to the TSC. If it's clicking a button, happy to do it. If not, I'm very happy somebody else deal with the contention and all the things. This is something I do not care about. Minus is better to do it now than later.
Right. So I think when I last looked at it, now may have moved on from there, there's like 2 alternatives. One is we just convert our project to become an enterprise project, and the other one was to like somehow move it under the OpenJS enterprise. Is that still where it's like the discussion?
Yeah, okay. That's the change, and by feedback received, it's the latter is connected to having some changing billing, which might impact our free credits and our other free stuff that we have attached to our project. So
right. So I'm like my take is way less risk to just the bit will be flipped for us in September. I personally think it's way less risk to just flip that bit versus like move to under another organization. I'm just like, so the question I would have is for other TSC members, is there anybody who's like, no, we should definitely move to the OpenJS organization? Or, you know, what are people's thoughts? Because I think that's the thing that's blocking us just flipping the bit. Once we agree what we're going to do, then if we're going to go, we're just going to flip the bit. I agree with Matteo, probably sooner than later is better. And so getting people's thoughts on that.
Note that we have 2 args. We have node.js and node.js-private to flip.
Right. Yeah. And
the node.js-private is full of free stuff in it. Okay. Like
I think both of them have lots of, like, we've got a special setup, right? So it's kind of like, I wouldn't want to mess with any of that.
Zero. If I could not make the change, I would not make the change.
Right.
So
exactly.
This is my take. It's not touch it, but we need to touch it. So it's better to touch it now than have it imposed on us.
So so anybody have any thoughts in terms of like, no, we should really not just flip the switch and move to the OpenJS enterprise account? Does anybody sort of an advocate for that. On the flip side, I guess like anybody object to that? Like Matteo and myself, I think are both like, yeah, we shouldn't do that. Any other people have thoughts one way or the other? I see, sounds like no strong opinions. I guess any opinions in terms of like flipping, if we did just flip it to the enterprise account, should we do that sooner or later? There's risk whenever that happens, but I'd agree with Matteo that we should just do it. It's probably better now than September if there's going to be some problems. Any objections to flipping the enterprise bit now versus waiting? Okay, I see nobody. Maybe the ask is if you do have any thoughts, jump into that issue. And otherwise we'll assume there aren't any objections and I guess Matteo, maybe we got to figure out how we close the answer since we don't have any additional input in terms of like going one way or the other. But it sounds like if we decided to flip the bit, nobody's concerned about doing it now versus later.
I think we should just flip the bit, and
Yeah.
maybe we can flip the bit of the main Node.js one, see how it goes, and then we flip the bit of the private one after that.
And I assume the conversation of moving under the OpenJS, that could actually be a completely separate, like that could be done later or something even, right? Like, so maybe it
I
makes
think
sense
so, yes.
to flip the bit.
I think.
And if that's the conversation to be had, we can have that as a longer conversation, right? Because I can,
Yeah,
okay. So maybe that's
I
the
think so, at
proposal.
least.
Okay. So maybe I'll make a proposal in the issue based on some of this discussion, and then we can see if there's any objections to that proposal and see where it goes.
Okay.
Okay, we are exactly at time. I guess I have to drop off. Well, I guess I could probably stick for another 5 minutes. Let's go to the private session. If people can drop off who are not TSC members, I'm going to stop the live stream. Thanks for everybody who's been listening on the live stream.
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody in GitHub next week.